several pieces for us to choose from. And I chose a piece from Brene Brown, who I don't know who here is reading Brene Brown, but she warms my heart. Watch her Netflix special. And this is about vulnerability, and also connected to our panel discussion earlier with our artist cohort. I think a lot in terms of what feels like meaningful art making and just meaningful being in the world right now. And to me, it's that vulnerability and true connection with people. Those are the moments where I feel my despair fall away, where I feel my fear fall away. And I feel such gratitude and love for all the people in my life with whom I can have that vulnerability. And I feel like I have many, and some of them are in this room, and some of you have been that in the past. And moving forward, let's continue to do that. So that's why I chose this piece. Vulnerability is the path. Vulnerability isn't good or bad. It's not what we call a dark emotion, nor is it always a light, positive experience. Vulnerability is the core of all emotions and feelings. To feel is to be vulnerable. To believe vulnerability is weakness is to believe that feeling is weakness. To foreclose on our emotional life out of a fear that the costs will be too high is to walk away from the very thing that gives purpose and meaning to living. Our rejection of vulnerability often stems from our associating it with dark emotions like fear, shame, grief, sadness, and disappointment. Emotions that we don't want to discuss, even when they profoundly affect the way we live, love, work, and even lead. What most of us fail to understand, and what took me a decade of research to learn, is that vulnerability is also the cradle of the emotions and experiences that we crave. We want deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives. Vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose, or deeper or more meaningful spiritual lives, vulnerability is the path. I know this is hard to believe, especially when we've spent our lives thinking that vulnerability and weakness are synonymous, but it's true. I define vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. With that definition in mind, let's think about love. Love is uncertain. It's incredibly risky. And loving someone leaves us emotionally exposed. Yes, it's scary, and yes, we're open to being hurt. But can you imagine your life without loving or being loved? To put our art, our writing, our photography, our ideas out into the world with no assurance of acceptance or appreciation, that's also vulnerability. To let ourselves sink into the joyful moments of our lives, even though we know that they are fleeting, even though the world tells us not to be too happy lest we invite disaster, that's an intense form of vulnerability. The profound danger is that, as noted above, we start to think of feeling as weakness. With the exception of anger, which is a secondary emotion, one that only serves as a socially acceptable mask for many of the more difficult underlying emotions we feel, we're losing our tolerance for emotion and hence for vulnerability. It starts to make sense that we dismiss vulnerability as weakness only when we realize that we've confused feeling with failing and emotions with liabilities. If we want to reclaim the essential emotional part of our lives and reignite our passion and purpose, we have to learn how to own and engage with our vulnerability and how to feel the emotions that come with it. For some of us, it's new learning. For others, it's relearning. Either way, the research taught me that the best place to start is with defining, recognizing, and understanding vulnerability. Folks need to know the ways we change and are changed when we love. It is only by bearing concrete witness to love's transformative power in our daily lives that we can assure those who are fearful that commitment to love will be redemptive, a way to experience salvation.